Hi, I am Monica-Gorsun, and I am a freelance producer, and I'm a member of NIWIFT, and I'm just a very active member.
And I'm Terry Lawler. I'm the Executive Director of New York Women in Film and Television. Should I tell what we do?
Yes.
Okay, so New York Women in Film and Television is a professional association of women in film, television, and digital media. We have 2,000 members in New York, and we're part of a network of 40 women in film chapters around the world with about 10,000 members worldwide. We present educational activities, workshops, seminars. We celebrate women's work by doing screenings. We advocate for equality for women in the business, and we preserve women's work. And we also have the best networking activities in New York City.
And you all should join, because boys can join as well. We have our membership drive, half-off initiation.
Half off.
Ends today, right?
It ends May 15th, is it today?
No. Oh, I thought it was just April. So you guys have time. So yes, join. So my name is Annetta Marion. I'm a director. I mostly work in documentary television, mostly making content for Oprah's network. And I'm on the board of NIWIFT and also a member of the PGA and DGA as well. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Marion.
No, thank you. Hi, I'm Mary Miles. I am an attorney, an entertainment attorney, specifically doing film, music, literary publishing within film, since that's what you're interested in. It's all kinds of aspects, from development and acquisition of underlying rights to financing through distribution, both for narrative and documentary. And I am also a board member of NIWIFT, and it's an extraordinary organization that really, really does a wonderful job of bringing together its members, even on a casual basis. Every month we just hang out, have some drinks, but that's the best time to get to know someone. And there have been many, many connections for myself that I know that I've made throughout the organization, so it's really wonderful, and we're happy to be here.
And there's a lot of organizations that are pushing for equal pay in general for women, because women all over are making 77 cents on the dollar. What happens in our industry is that, there's a lot of people who get paid a lot, but always the top paid male star is getting paid millions more than the top paid female star, regardless of how much money the films that person makes brings in. So obviously we all know about the Jennifer Lawrence situation, that she was being paid less for American Hustle, is that what it's called? Than the male stars, even though it was kind of she was being paid less than the guy who played the mayor, who, I don't know if you know the film, but he didn't have very many lines at all. So, and as you know, she's a huge star. Her movies bring in a lot of money. And so there's really no relationship between the marketplace and what the people are being paid. It's just that they feel like they can get women for less, and so they try to do that. One of the things that can alleviate that is transparency. I mean, there was accidental transparency with the leaks of the Sony emails, but if there's transparency across the board among the people that were being hired for different jobs, it would make a huge difference to women, because they would know. And the other thing that they could do is agents can start demanding that there be sort of a most favored nation kind of clause in their contracts that would mean that if so-and-so who has the same number of lines or is the co-star or whatever, if that person's getting that much, then my client has to get that much. Maybe Mary can explain that a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very key provision. And in fact, when I heard about the huge disparity with Jennifer Lawrence, I just sat back and said, I just can't believe what were her lawyers and agents doing, because that's the first thing that gets thrown at me as someone who represents producers by actors. In some cases, it's absolutely appropriate. In other cases, it's just a reach, and you try to work out something. I think it becomes a very different conversation when the everyday worker doesn't have the leverage that Jennifer Lawrence doesn't have. And how do we try to obtain transparency from our employers? Virtually impossible on the day-to-day. But I think having the voices of Meryl Streep and Jennifer Lawrence and all these other very powerful women bringing the call to action, raising the awareness, perhaps somehow, somewhere, that person hiring you is going to understand that maybe I should really do the right thing here and not have this bifurcated system of compensation, because it's absolutely ridiculous. We all know this.
Can I say something about just the, to pick up Mary's point of, it's different for the person on a day-to-day basis, like not stars and that sort of thing. What I've started to do is ask my coworkers what they make and tell my coworkers what I make. And that's the only way, I mean, so we, as like the little people, actually can and do have some power, because it's only when like we don't talk and we don't share that kind of information do the people who are hiring us, who they want us to be secretive about money. And if we just decide to stop being secretive about money, and it's weird to like roll your chair over to your coworker's desk and be like, all right, tell me everything about your rates on your job. I'll tell you everything about the rates on my job. And it's powerful. So that's something that we can do.
Sure.
And it's awkward or weird, but I think the more we do that, the more it will become commonplace. And then if we're making our own transparency, we can less be taken advantage of. So I'm a big fan for asking the awkward question. You know, New Yorkers will talk about rent, like what you're paying for rent, and that's like so accepted here, and that's really not accepted anywhere else in the country. Channel that and talk about how much you're getting paid, like, because we know how to do that. We know how to talk about rent without being embarrassed about it. What you paid for your apartment. So let's talk about what we're getting paid in that same unembarrassed sort of this is the way that it is kind of way.
Never had that mentality or experience, or if they thought that, maybe I just block it out. I go in, I know I'm the best and I'm going to execute it, and if they ever had any doubts, I've obviously proved them wrong. I'm just never even thought that somebody would, maybe I had blinders on, you know? But have you guys ever had that?
I totally have.
Really?
Yeah, I had an experience once where there were 3 directors on a show, 2 tall white men and myself. I was by far the most experienced director in terms of scripted narrative work. And as we approached one season of the 3 of us directing scripted narrative pieces of the show, I was the only one of the 3 that was required to do storyboards. The boys weren't. I was required to share some of my footage after my shoot days with the executives. The boys weren't. Until I killed it, and then it kind of fell away. So I think what's worked for me is to become indispensable. First of all, you have to become indispensable, and then demand what you want. And when you don't, and be prepared to walk away. Those are like 3 key things, because you can't ever threaten anything. Like, well, I'm not going to do that if you don't mean it.
Right.
But if you've gone through all the options and know that you can and will and are ready, there is an intangible power that is just created, and you feel it, and so does everybody else.
You know your worth.
Yeah. So yeah, those are the only 3 things that have ever worked for me, because it's never worked for me saying that I can do this, I'm able to do this, look at my track record. People who don't want to see that are still just not going to see that. But the becoming indispensable thing is a really powerful way to go.
I think that's an extraordinary message, because even as a lawyer, believe it or not, I have hit a massive glass ceiling, in fact, bulletproof, nuclear proof, everything proof. And that's exactly the advice I would give anyone. With respect to my female clients who are producers, directors, writers, it's very hard for me to distinguish how much of it is the challenges of making any film, which is how much experience does the director have? How much experience do the producers have? Do you have a first-rate team? Like, did you assemble the perfect team for your project? Is your budget on target? Is your story good? So there are a lot of intangibles that are very hard to place, but I've actually seen I've been practicing law for now about 18 years, and so I've been very blessed with long track records with clients, and through the years, while initially those are the challenges for all of my clients, I've very much noticed that the women are still in year 7, 8, 10, 12, still struggling with the same issues that they were 5 years before that were gender neutral, but now are almost very gender specific. But it still boils down to your craft, being good at what you do, surrounding yourself by extraordinary people who will support you and are also good at their jobs, because it is a team. But it's hard. It's hard. That doesn't mean it's impossible.
The Women's Impact Network of the Producers Guild put together a wonderful resource which shows how women-directed films and women-centered films, where main characters are women, make as much money as other films. And it's a really nice, you can get it online.
That's the Ms. Toolkit?
The Ms. Toolkit, yeah.
Just Google Ms. Toolkit.
And it's really good tool to have if you're trying to put together a movie and you're facing a financier who's feeling, very iffy about should there be a woman director hired for this. This is a good tool to use to get that person over the hurdle of, being afraid to hire a woman director.
And speaking of tools, I think there are three places for information that's really critical. Ms. Toolkit for sure, and that's more from like a content point of view. There's also the initiative out of USC. Is it Sundance?
The Female Filmmaker Initiative.
Yeah.
Which is Sundance and Women in Film in LA. And it's based on studies by that happened at USC.
Right. And it's that study I heard explained on the floor of the UN recently, which was pretty freaking awesome that people were talking about that on the floor of the UN. And so that study was more an analysis of proof that women being behind the camera change what content is being created. Women characters are different, how they're dressed is different, like all that kind of stuff. So that's another great pot of information. And then from like an employment point of view, the DGA has just finished like a 5-year study of data about I think it's mostly episodic television, but how women enter that workforce and how they don't, and how clearly the problem is the entry point, because still at the entry point where everybody is equally their first episode, that entry point is still like 85% like white males, so clearly the entry point is a problem. So it's those three are the three kind of places for information that I've found recently that are huge. Like, so we have the data now. We have to do something with that data to change the status quo. But at least we have the data. It's not just a gut feeling, anecdotal information, my sister's experience. There's data now, and that's, unfortunately, it has to be a first step. But the first step, it feels to me, has been taken, which is terrific. So there's anything else? Those are the three, if you guys are interested to look up.
And you can always look on the NIWIF website, so that's niwif.org. And I have some brochures and postcards and application forms over there. We have, under resources on the website, we have all of the studies that have been done recently listed. So if you wanted to look at some of those to get some ammunition to make our case, please feel free.
Just pretend, because if you go out there and you're exposed and you're supposed to be a leader, whether you're a producer or a DP, you are the head of your department, whether that's art department or the whole production. Like, nobody's going to want to follow you into the battlefield if you don't even believe in yourself. So if you have the nerves, do it privately. If you need to cry, do it privately. It's work. and you need to go to work. You know, a lot of times it's very emotional and you're passionate about a project, and it could be in your heart and you're just totally in love with something, but it's a job, and it's a great job. But you have to know that you can do it. And you know, if you ever have a doubt, find a mentor and get great advice, and also know you're going to make mistakes, but you can always fix them. So that's just I've always knew I was going to do something wrong, but I'm going to fix it. It's going to be the best. And I guess I got that from my mom.
For those of us who weren't lucky enough to have your mom, because your mom's amazing. I actually have a couple things to think about you might want to do. So when you are working as, you know, like the director, like the leader, you know, you need to inspire the troops to follow you into battle. Like, you have to be that confident, and you have to be able to still, you know, have your sense about you when, you know, everything is going wrong. Because the minute anything goes wrong, everyone's looking at you. And I think, for me, like, that's a muscle that you can actually strengthen. And one of the ways to strengthen that muscle is to not shy away from situations that are putting you outside your comfort zone. Like, seek those situations that put you outside your comfort zone, like, over and over and over and over again. And then you'll be used to that. And then when everything is going to hell and back and everyone's looking at you, you're used to it. Like, it's fine. And one of the ways for me that, I mean, I'm an adventurer out of the gate, but I do improv now. And I was I did the AFI's Directing Workshop for Women program about 10 years ago, and Catherine Hardwick was there, and someone at a panel had asked her, what kind of class do you take to be a director like you? Which is the stupidest question ever, because there's no class like that. And Catherine said, well, there's no class like that, but, you know, I did take an improv class, and I felt that was helpful. And I hate to be on camera. I am clearly squarely behind camera talent, and that stuck in my head, and I was like, oh. So I came back to New York City, took an improv class, hated it so much I never went to class. They kicked me out. I was like, but I paid my money, and they were like, doesn't matter. I was like, oh, who knew? Note to self. Seriously. And that same teacher kept me in the loop of every level 1 improv class for like 7 years. So I finally took the class, went through all the levels, now I perform, and I like it now. But it took me years of being like, I hated it.
And she's really good.
I'm really not.
Yeah,
Marion's just very kind. But like that's a practical example, and that's just was my outside of my comfort zone because I'm behind camera talent. If you are in front of camera talent, find something else that's outside of your comfort zone. But just be outside your comfort zone as much as possible in your life, and I think that is a pragmatic way to do that. What you're talking about, which is so intangible, something to think about. But that's just like one little example, and if you're an actor, you love being in improv, and that's great. You have to figure out your own thing, but for me, it was improv, or one of the things.
I think all of the advice is exactly spot on. You know, no one leaves school or no one shows up in New York and directs a movie, right? You start off as a PA, you start off as an assistant somehow. You start off as an associate if you're a lawyer. You have no idea what you're doing that day. Am I getting the right kind of coffee? Is the temperature right? Is it going to be cold by the time I get it to the lead actor who's going to have... Right. How many times am I get whatever? So we all have these challenges. We all have to grow into our life position, into our experiences. Every day is a challenge. And we rise and meet that challenge. And it goes back to become good at what you do. And the very interesting thing that I find about being good at what you do really is very subjective between men and women. And so when you do have that position of maybe not the director, but at least the head of a department of some kind, you do. Like that first day, that very first job, you're gonna have to fake it for at least 3 hours, right? And like sometimes you have to say, okay, all right, everyone's looking at me, I'm just gonna look really like I know what I'm doing, but the only thing I know how to do is go to the bathroom right now and get a cup of coffee, because those are the two things that I know are physically there. I know nothing else. But on your second day, you know at least half the crew's name. And
Right.
so it's a learning experience. You get through it. I find it fascinating that I think that women tend to want to educate themselves and become very competent at what they're doing, and that for us, it seems from my perspective, it takes us a little longer for our perception to reach our reality.
Oh, can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
So I work primarily in commercials. That's how I can pay the mortgage and then do narrative, because there's no money in movies. But I noticed that in commercial world, men would move up so much faster. And all my girlfriends who were coordinators trying to become PMs or PMs trying to become producers, they felt that they had to be absolutely perfect and know everything for that position. And then I happened to be really close to this one colleague, and he had made the move so fast. He was like office PA, then coordinator, and then PM, all in like 3 years, which is, I was like, what did you do? And he's like, oh, somebody just called me up and I just said yes. I didn't know what I was doing. And because I talked to my girlfriends, they're like, oh, I turned down the job. I didn't think I was ready. I was like, well, that person who called you thought that you were, and now you've missed out. And so I just did what the guy did. I'm like, guys are just doing it. I'm just going to pretend. And I just get on iChat, and I'm like, what is going on? This insurance thing says this. Oh, it's this. I'm like, oh, okay. Nobody needs to know. But I'm like a duck on the water.
Right.
On the backside, I'm like,
Yeah, of course. Yes.
yeah.
But the reality is
leap.
we take longer to get there, to understand that about ourselves, that I'm ready to take that jump. And I find it in all aspects of business. It's the male associates, right? They come their first year, they're not even done drafting an agreement. They can't draft anything, but they're going out looking for clients and they're pitching people. And I'm like, sit down, young man, and go learn how to draft an agreement before you actually get some business. And on the flip side, I have female associates where I'm like, go get some clients. You know what you're doing.
Pushing,
go.
Yeah.
So, but it is that jump for all of us. Male or female, you have to come to a place where you take that moment and say, I want that job. I want that responsibility. It's easy to coast, and obviously this is not an industry where you can coast in, or else you're simply going to be overlooked.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a question of, someone during the Muse Awards said she sits in a lot of pitch meetings, and women come into the room having 99.5% of the information and worry about the 0.5% that they may not know or can't recall. And the men come in with 50% of the information and just bluff the rest of it. And you know what? I don't know what's right, but it has to be right for you. But it is a question of stepping up to the table as well.
I knew this one guy. He told me, he was like, oh, when I used to hire you, I hired you because I knew you knew everything and I knew nothing, and I didn't want to tell you that. Because that's why I knew my shoots would go well, because you would always cover me. And then I was like, are you kidding me? I was doing your job. And it was my paycheck. And so I thought about it. I was like, I need to just start saying yes. And I did, and I moved up faster. And I realized I knew a lot of it already, and I just needed that push.
It's not even sometimes saying yes. It's affirmatively saying, I would like that job. Could you consider me, because I think I could do a good job. Now inside you're panicking, you're jelly, you're like, oh my god, what am I doing?
But you'll figure it out.
You do.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
And if you can't figure it out, you know someone who's done it who will tell you how to go do it, and that's it.
Use your friends. It takes a village, for sure.
Working.
There's a minimum.
Yeah, something's about minimums, not about
It's a floor, not a ceiling.
maximums.
Right? So no one can get paid less than X, but the X is far great. We're talking about American Hustle, $20 million, a $10 million discrepancy, where I think Bradley Cooper made $20 million on that film and Jennifer Lawrence made 10. Unacceptable. Both like scene for scene. I think they had the same amount of frames in the film. It was just unacceptable for them to have any kind of disparity. If you were run it through SAG, I think the number is like $3,000 or $4,000 a week. So we're talking about floors, not ceilings.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's it's important on the smaller end, but it just becomes less important when we're talking about millions and not thousands of dollars a week.
But you know, the millions are also gets duplicated in the people. So say everybody has to get 3,000 a week, you know, no matter what. But then some people are getting paid 10,000 or 20,000 for bit parts, and the women are still getting paid less for those bit parts than the men are, line for line. So it's systemic throughout our business.
In my field, it's super. There's a handful of people that once you tell them, oh, I want to move up, they'll stop hiring me because they're like, oh, you're going to take my job.
Yeah.
And then there's the exact opposite where you're like, that's awesome. This is what I know. This is where I did wrong. Don't do that because that was bad. And then, because then, you know, if you're helping them and you can't do the job and you can recommend them, vice versa, it's actually you're widening your pool of work possibilities. That's how I see it. You know, I know Heather from camera, and I first did camera, and I think it was really hard when I was in camera to find a woman mentor, because at that time I think it was just you and Anna Yusum and just a handful of women. I think that was probably the most challenging, to find like somebody else that understands like that. And it's gotten a whole lot better. I think it's gotten a better situation now.
I've never had a mentor. I would love one still.
I think you're like,
anyone
"You're a
knows?
mentor." It's like, yes,
Yeah.
where do you put
Yeah.
it on Craigslist?
I mean, I've mentored a million people,
Yeah.
and I think it's so individual. You know, I think it's like that's my nature. I mean, I'm not doing it because I should do it. I'm doing it because that's just my nature. And I have other female friends in the business who are, you know, equal level to me or higher, who that's not their nature, and they're not even going to help me, and she loves me. It's her nature. You know, so I think it's just an individual nature thing. So I have a hard time seeing if it's better or worse now because I'm still looking. So that's just my experience. And speaking of mentorship and camera in particular, you guys probably knew.
Well, I'd love to hear Terry too.
Well, I know 600, Local 600, which is the camera local, has recently been supportive of a women's initiative within the local, and like this is the first time 600 has done anything proactive about women, so it's a gigantic step. So where that is going, not clear, but it's only going in a good way. I do believe they just launched, I don't think it's from 600, but 600 has been supportive of the effort, launched a website that's showcasing women DPs, both union and non-union.
One of the members of
Meg
the-
Kettle.
Yeah, Meg, right,
Well,
exactly.
actually, it's Autumn Eakin who set the website.
Oh, okay.
But
Makes sort of
Yes.
yeah.
So there's lots of stuff happening
But
with
that-
women in
that
camera.
actually is one person doing one thing who she set up a website for women cinematographers because she said like everyone thinks there aren't any, and
Right.
or how do I get one? I want I'd love to have one, but I don't know. You know, and they started this whole campaign with producers where producers were like, well, I mean not producers, agents. You know, saying, do you represent any women? And they're like, well.
There aren't any.
Well, there aren't. Yeah, no, actually there are. So, and she said that people have tried to do it before, but she just found it always failed in some way. And so she set up a website that is you have to meet a certain criteria to be involved in it. You have there's 2 tiers, which also helps. So it's like if you make your living doing it, you're in the 1 tier. If you're doing it but you're not making a living, and there's certain your qualifications and stuff like that. But it's just very simple, and you get to put your reel there.
Mhm.
And it's one place that people can go, you know, and the one she has is East Coast. There's one on the West Coast that the West Coast region has, and I don't know about the Central region yet, but it's made a huge difference. Just one person doing one thing.
And we're working with them, the Meg and Autumn and the rest of the people involved. We've been meeting with 600, trying to get 600 is like trying to move a boulder, but local 600 is the cinematography. But we do plan to start a mentorship program, that will both, it will train the mentees and train the mentors. So everyone going into it has an understanding of what it is that they're signing up for, what they can expect of their mentors, and what the mentors need to agree to sort of give to the mentees. So that's great, and there are a few structured programs like that. It's always very important. I mean, we have an intern mentorship program where we assign people mentors after they finish their internship with NIWIFT, and they they have to sign an agreement, and they're it's made very clear to them this is not a job referral service. This is someone to advise you on what your next step should be in your career. And another way, besides these sort of formal programs, is to network and meet people and find out who's doing things that might be helpful to you if you learned more about their work, and take them out for coffee and talk to them. And from those kinds of informational meetings, often people fall into kind of a mentor-mentee relationship, and kind of help them. The people sort of, they know them, they've had coffee, then they meet them here and there, and pretty soon it can become a relationship where you're really helping and advising. And then sometimes it turns around, because now the person who's been your mentor is embarking on a new thing. Suppose they lose their job, now they're becoming an independent producer, but you know all about that, so you can help them with that. So.
I have a great mentor story that might encourage people to be mentors. So, do you remember Mika, who was one of NIWIFT's interns?
Mm-hmm.
She had approached me after something I spoke on, and wanted me to mentor her, and I was like, of course. So we do, and she was a writer, and I'm not a writer, so I did the best I could with her, and cut to she, following some advice, I'm sure she got advice from other people, she was got an internship on a television show in Los Angeles, and then so we stay in contact and we talk and everything, and then cut to she was able to throw my hat in as a director for a show that company was working on. So mentorships, I don't think, are all about the mentor giving the mentee. It's more about two colleagues creating a relationship, and you have no clue when it's going to bear fruit or if it's going to bear fruit. You're creating a relationship, and it goes both ways. And I think if we start thinking about mentorship through that lens, it becomes a more attractive. It's more, that's the reality of it, and B, it becomes more attractive, because then you want to expand your circle. You're going to expand your circle. This is another way to do it. So anyway, I thought that was like, oh, great, yes, of course you can throw my name in the hat for the job I would love.
I think when you hit a certain place, a certain level in life and in your profession, I don't see it as a mentoring relationship. It is a community, and that's what I've really found at NIWIFT. It's not necessarily mentoring me as an attorney, but Annetta and I have had conversations. We've had drinks. I've had it with other NIWIFT members, and they'll feed me ideas about certain things about my career, or I get anecdotal information about career trajectories, and very much being an entrepreneur, because the entertainment industry requires everyone to be an entrepreneur. You are in the business of you, and it's a give and take. Like Annetta has questions about some things. I'm like, oh, this is how you do it when you are dealing with this. And then I'm like, and how did you solve that issue? Or who did you hire? Who did you ask, so that I know that I can help other clients in the future with that information? Or just for my own edification or knowledge that maybe I can apply to my own job day to day. So would it be great for someone to come down with a wand and say, I'm your mentor? That's great. But I really see it as a community around yourself where you interact and build, and it's just about the relationships.
And being able to really promote that. And I love the way that you're really speaking about the fact that women are different than men. We're not trying to be that, and we have these incredible values, superior in certain ways. The social sensitivity in communication is what is the new trend, by the way, in business. Everyone's going to be looking for women because
Social sensitivity and
social
what?
sensitivity communication.
Okay.
Because everyone's dying for more community, being able to have, it's more sound, like who can I have as my sounding board? Who can I develop and just create this, like, oh, I didn't think of that, you know, that we're in this world now that has been so isolating digitally that I think people are like starving for just like, can I just talk to you? I just need to talk, and women are verbal, and
And for the record, I've had wonderful male mentors, if you will, only because they were older, they were far more established, and I was the little person in the room. And I've had men very much place a lot of responsibility in my hands, look to me for guidance. Look, and when they're clearly the senior person in the room, they're like, Mary, what would you do? And I'm like, but you know, that's a leap of faith that they're taking in me. And so I don't think it's a gender issue, but there is a community that we need to build. You know, I was having this conversation with someone, why are the guys getting the jobs? Well, maybe the guys are playing squash or whatever they do. No, sorry guys. Video games, whatever. Chess, whatever. And they're like, hey, you know, I had a great X kind of game with so-and-so. Why don't we call him? He was great on the court. He was a fun guy. Why don't we work with him? I don't know. And, you know, women need to create that network for themselves, the short list, the people that you call up for help, the people that you suggest. And I think it's healthy, I think it's productive, but we're all in this together. And
it's also possible, because I mean, that's one of the things that's been amazing about this Global 600 group. Women, it's the first time it's ever been done, and it's
gigantic.
almost a year and a half now.
It is.
Yeah,
that's
on the
wonderful.
East Coast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. It's incredible, and people show up, and there's this, we separate into different like committees to deal with different, because everyone has different things, that, whether it's like breastfeeding on the job or doing whatever, you know, it's like all these things that have never been anything anyone can ever think about or deal with, or and I feel like every time we meet this, it's like a growth process that happens.
That's terrific.
Process. It's like, the first meeting is going to be weird and different, and just everyone's going to share their sexual harassment stories, you know, and then you're going to move on from that to the next, you know, whatever it is. But it's like it needs to happen. It needs to. You need to just start to trust each other.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Listen to each other.
Absolutely. I have one more office PA tell me, like, that's not my job.
Seriously?
Oh my God. I had this one girl.
Hold on. No. Is it just women, or is that just because that's the job they have?
No, I think it's
like
generational.
it's so
I think
generational.
not
It's
sex,
just
it's
like,
generational.
and it's just certain, like this one, two office PAs I've
That's
had.
crazy.
One, she's amazing. I think she's like 22. She's super sweet. She'll do anything. And this other one, she was like, I'm not picking up that trash. And I was like, you're a PA. Like, I know that you spent like a ridiculous amount of money in school, and like that's your bad. But like you got I'm writing you a check at the end of this job, and that, you know, like this part of the job is for you to take out the trash. And I had a coming to Jesus meeting. Like
I am dumbfounded.
Oh yeah, and then I'll call guys, and they're like, oh, I don't drive the truck. I'm more of like, you know, I don't really do a lot of this stuff. I'm more of like a director's assistant. I'm like, well, I'm glad. Thank you for letting me know.
Right, in 5 years
I
from now,
totally
you can do
different
that.
ex- yeah.
Today, you're picking up the garbage, but thank you.
So
I'll keep that in mind.
When I started, I was like, I'm gonna take out the best trash. It's gonna be organized. Foam in your coffee. I was like,
no, I had a totally different experience. Thank you,
Really?
thank you, because those would be the last words somebody would ever say to me.
right?
So on my last season, I had two. They were right out of college, so that's millennials, right? So two girls, right out of college, and so when I hire on my show, I really actually tried very hard to discourage people to take the job, because it's going to be that hard, and I don't want any whiners. So there's that part of the hiring process in my world. So when people actually get through that, you know, that gauntlet and get the job, these two girls completely killed it. One now, so she just got out of college, I guess it was just last year. She's now working as an AP, only because of the gauntlet that was my series that she worked on. So I mean, those guys were early. They stayed late. I didn't have to say a word, and my coffee would show up. And they were like proactive. They could not have been better and more hardworking and more smart. So I'm glad I had that experience with them and not that experience, because that wouldn't work. So I guess I think it's I'm sure there's a generational thing, but it comes down to we're all individuals.
Yep.
Yeah.
We have a lot of interns and a lot of people that come through right after college, and they most of them are really great and working really hard and very ambitious and also very helpful and warm and nice to be around, and it makes the office a nice friendly place. And then every once in a while there's someone who says, well, that I didn't come here to do that, I didn't sign up for this to do that kind of work, like filing or something. And we just fire them.
It's that simple.
It's really,
Seriously.
You fired them from an unpaid job.
Fire them from an unpaid job.
I fired lots of unpaid people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no, and we also say to them, you're never going to be able to move forward in this business if there are things you won't do. You have to be able to do anything that's required.
With a smile.
Yeah.
Yeah, no attitude.
Yeah.
I find it, my interaction's a little different, but generally it's the same characteristics of I'm sorry, you're not doing me a favor. This is a job, and actually do your job. I find the one thing that's eroded completely is communication, like the written communication. When we're writing in a professional setting, please use full sentences. Please use a capital letter at the beginning of a sentence. Commas are great. Punctuation's really fantastic. Please don't add emojis in your emails, and don't end it with like a XO thing. Like just don't. Or all caps. Nobody likes that. Don't be shouty. But also, use capital letters when appropriate. You don't. Everything is lowercase. So full sentences, proper grammar. Proper introductions. I always think about this, and I'm like, there's that book, Everything I Learned in Everything Important Was in Kindergarten. Kind of go back to kindergarten. People, you were taught to say please and thank you, and to write properly with a proper capital letter at the beginning, commas, periods. Maybe that was first grade, but so it's really not tough. But when you've got, and it is individual, but I see a lot of this generational coddling from parents. So you end up with children who are like, I don't know what I'm doing. You know what? I didn't know what I was doing the first day either, but I faked it, and I got it done, and then I went back for my second day, and all was good. But I find it comical that, there are kids. Recently someone was telling me that she interviews a lot of millennials, a lot of kids straight out of college for her company. And she has parents who drive their kids to the interview. All good, right? Fine. I remember my mom doing it. She would wait in the parking lot for me, right? Give me the whole, you can do this, honey. Good for you. Mommy loves you. Come back. Yeah. And they come in and sit in the lobby. Don't do that. And then when you don't get the job, it's the mom or dad that calls up and says, I want to know why my son didn't get the job. Okay, and she usually says this is exactly why your son or daughter did not get the job. So, these are not, it's not anything, seriously. It's horrifying.
I'm a college professor, yes.
Yeah.
Why did my son get a D on that paper?
Oh my God.
He didn't earn it. He earned a D. I didn't give him anything. So, it's just common sense. Go back to basic human knowledge and wanting to do a good job. There's no job, generally speaking, there's no job that is above you. I don't care who I am in this life. I will go and pick up the garbage if it's overflowing.
I
it's not a
firewatched
big
on
deal.
my last shoot this last night. I was like, I'm firewatching.
Yeah,
Everybody was doing
it's
stuff.
you do what you need to do.
Yeah.
It's really basic stuff, but please don't have your parents call up and ask why you didn't get a job.
There's much more really smart, really ambitious,
Yes.
and just talented women coming in that than there are people that are not really ready to be grown-ups. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, we have something like 10 interns, and they sort of turn over constantly. So we may have 100 interns during the course of a year, and maybe 2 are not really great, really smart, and are going to really do something with their careers.
Join organizations like NIWIFT. Come meet the people that you're sending those resumes to. Get the introduction. Informational interviews are great. If you can't actually get the real interview, informational stuff is great because you get in front of people, you get practice.
Yeah, I mean, something that I didn't do, and I wish somebody would have told me a long, long time ago, I didn't really join groups that I could join for years, just because I didn't want to spend the money or whatever it was, and that was one of the biggest mistakes in my career. NIWIFT, and not all you can't just join a lot of organizations. NIWIFT, I think to our benefit, has our New Wave, Next Wave?
Next Wave group.
The Next Wave group. So without credits, and just an intention, you can join. And that's like an amazing thing that everybody should take advantage of, because and then when you join, make the most of whatever memberships, whatever you're joining, make the most of it. Don't be a passive person waiting for that organization to make your career or to help you. Volunteer, join a committee, show up, get to know people, give, and then you'll get to know people. And so when someone else has something to give, like a job or whatever, you're like front of mind. It's your job to become front of mind. So, and it's showing up. I mean, that's such a big part of it, and showing up consistently so people remember your face. Oh yeah, hey, what was your name again? Like that kind of stuff. And look at where we are in New York City. Those opportunities are coming out of your ears. Just make the most of them. So that's.
Yeah. I recently told my cousin who went to college, I said, no one's inviting you to life. There is no invitation to life. You have to go for it. You have to be assertive. You have to, even when you feel silly. I mean, I remember the first time I met Terry, I was in an elevator. I wasn't sure who she was. I was like, good morning. I hope I didn't sound that way, but that's what I felt like inside. And, she's friendly, lovely. I haven't seen her be anything but...
I will never forget the first time Terry called me. You have no recollection. But I was like just a member of NIWIFT, and I had missed some meeting, and I was very sad because I had to work, so I sent in some email, and then my phone rings, and it's some number I don't recognize, but I'm in production, so I pick it up, and you were like, this is Terry Lawler from NIWIFT. I was like, oh my God, Terry Lawler knows my name. Oh my God. So I don't know why I just told that story. Nothing to do with your
it's like going to meet someone, right?
You
We all feel silly.
Terry. Now we're buddies.
Also, and I think we'd love to have you join NIWIFT, but also I don't know what your sort of ultimate goal is, if you're wanting to be a filmmaker, or is that right? A lot of our members have gotten a lot out of volunteering for festivals, because they meet other filmmakers, they meet other volunteers who are also wanting to be filmmakers. So it helps them form sort of peer groups, who's working, meet people that are working on projects, and you can work on their projects, they can work on your projects. So I think that's, if you have the time, is a really good way to get sort of immersed in the New York filmmaking community.
And if you want to be a filmmaker, make stuff. Like that's so much easier today than it was like when I started making stuff.
Yeah.
So make stuff, whatever it is. Put it on Vimeo. Make a lot of stuff, because you have to make a lot of really bad stuff before you start making good stuff. I just looked at some of my old stuff recently, and I was like, oh my God. Glad no one is seeing this. And so
I think
get it out.
There's some really great Facebook forums. So if you just type in production or film in NYC, you'll see there's just so many. And they'll be posting like, oh, I need a PA tomorrow, last minute, or oh, we're doing this. And I think that's one good way. And you just do Google searches and stuff like that. And don't be afraid to cold call. If there's a production company and you really like their roster directors, and you want to like, hey, can I just come in? Can I like be your intern? Show gumption. And what do you want to do?
I want to be a documentary filmmaker.
Okay. Well, then that's probably like a really good thing. Just go out, find those, those documentarians that you really like, invite them out to coffee, and then just get out there, because nobody's gonna knock on your door.
I think fear can stop people, but I think if you change your way that you look at fear and you understand that fear is normal and natural, not going anywhere, that's okay and that's normal, and just like learn to be productive and proactive even though you are fearful. Like fear, don't be afraid of fear. Fear is just the way that it is. Everyone's afraid. I mean, seriously, 100% true. Like everyone is afraid every single day. Like people that I look at who like have the careers that I want, and I know some of them are as fearful as I am. I'm as fearful as you are. Like it's just the way and that's normal. Just learn how to move forward feeling that way, and don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of fear. That's it. Don't be afraid of fear. I wish someone would have told me that a long time ago.
Well, it goes to your improv, Del Close.
Yeah.
Follow the fear. Follow the fear.
Exactly.
That's what big things.
The beauty. That's where the beauty is.
Closing remarks. Let's say I think New York has a wonderful and vibrant independent film community. You have to seek it out. Again, there are no invitations to anything. Go for it. Become part of the community. The more you participate, the more you will receive from it. And along the way, you have a lot of fun. And yes, you will have moments of jelly in the belly and all these great things. But we grow through our challenges, and there is an extraordinary community out there to foster all of us. And we just have to put the energy out, put the effort out into the community that we want to be part of, and the community will reward you back in time.